Scientists create the perfect system for replicating a person, the same age, memory before the copying, the same habits. The first tests become a sensation, people meet their own doubles, and the world seems to look into a mirror. At first, everyone experiences euphoria. Finally, they can divide work, leisure, and dreams between multiple versions of themselves. But already in the first days, a key discovery emerges: the clones are the same individuals, with the same desires. And none of them intend to be an addition. The first problems arise in families. Parents are confused about whether to consider the clones children or a second set of the same people. Children become jealous of the cloned adults, and spouses lose their sense of uniqueness in their partner. Arguments arise in homes: who owns personal space, who gets family roles. With the appearance of clones, the traditional family structure collapses. Now each member of the family system has their own reflection, and the balance turns into chaos. Psychologists are noticing something no one expected: people begin to view their own personality as a copyable asset. They create clones for specific purposes: one works, another creates, a third relaxes, a fourth studies. The very sense of self becomes blurred. A dangerous phenomenon emerges: if one version succeeds, the others feel unnecessary and devalued, even though they are the same person. The clones, feeling the pressure of expectations, begin their first protest. They declare, they are not tools, they want freedom of choice. The streets of major cities are filled with protesting versions of the same people. This becomes a nightmare for authorities. It is impossible to understand who initiated the protest, who is responsible for the crowd's actions, who is the leader. For the first time, the world is confronted with a population that is impossible to identify. Companies are beginning to use clones as perfectly trained employees. Many believe, if I can make clones, why hire others? Millions of people are losing their jobs, and the labor market is collapsing. At the same time, corporations are tightening controls, requiring originals to sign agreements regarding the rights to their own clones. A new market is emerging: personality licensing. The more talented a person, the more valuable their clones. Police are faced with an insurmountable problem: crimes are being committed by people with identical DNA, identical fingerprints, and even identical memories. During interrogations, clones claim, "It wasn't me, although it could have been." Forensic scientists are losing ground, the legal system is collapsing. For the first time in history, guilt becomes an insoluble problem. A new fear arises: someone will create your clone without permission. The internet is filled with offers of illegal cloning based on stolen samples. People begin wearing gloves, afraid to leave hair, saliva, even breath. Biological data becomes a danger, and privacy becomes an illusion that cannot be restored. The most sought-after people, actors, musicians, leaders, become the objects of hunting. Hundreds of copies of popular figures appear, each demanding the right to be real. Fans go crazy, governments ban copying famous people, but the black market thrives. An era is dawning where status and uniqueness disappear. Originals suddenly face a collapse in self-esteem. When your clone lives better, works more successfully, or is happier, burnout and a loss of meaning occur. People come to psychologists with a new problem: I'm afraid my best self isn't me. Therapists call this mirror image syndrome. Some people begin relationships with their copies, arguing that no one understands them better than you do. Society is divided: some consider this natural, others disgusting. A new ethical dilemma arises: is it possible to love yourself enough to create a partner from your own genetic duplicate? A philosophy emerges: if I age, I can copy myself over and over again. People create clones younger than themselves and transfer their memories to them. Society debates: is this life or an eternal change of hosts? Some begin to consider themselves the 10th or 100th iteration of the original, and no one knows where history began. Countries are trying to regulate cloning, introducing quotas, passports, and bans. But technology is so accessible that stopping the process is impossible. Cloning becomes an act of freedom and protest. Clandestine laboratories appear in every city, and governments lose control over populations that can reproduce without limit. Clones begin to unite into their own communities, where all residents are copies of a single individual. These communities are completely autonomous, they share the same views, the same goals, and are perfectly coordinated. From the outside, they appear frightening, an absolute unity without conflict. But within, another problem arises: competition between identical minds with identical ambitions. The communities quickly turn into arenas for the right to be the dominant self. An underground industry of modified copies emerges. People want to create versions of themselves that are smarter, stronger, calmer, and more beautiful. Enhanced DNA profiles are sold on the black market. Some create clones that surpass the originals in every way, and this sparks a new round of hatred and envy. People fear they will lose control of their own evolution. The military is the first to understand the power of mass cloning. It's now possible to create an army where every soldier possesses the same training, skills, and strategic thinking. Generals call such troops the ideal infantry. But the clones themselves realize they are expendable. The first mass mutinies among combat units occur, because no one wants to be created just for the sake of war. The population grows catastrophically. People clone themselves for work, to help, to experiment. Cities are overwhelmed, housing runs out, transportation is overloaded, resources are divided among duplicates. A new form of social conflict arises: originals versus mass copies. With each passing day, the earth becomes filled with reflections of reflections. Politicians understand that cloning undermines any elections. A single person can create hundreds of voting copies. Ultimately, democracy becomes completely meaningless. Clonotechnocracies emerge, new forms of government where the uniqueness of people, rather than the number of people, is taken into account. Clones are beginning to demand voting rights separate from their originals, leading to a new type of political warfare. World religions are grappling with the question: does a clone have a soul? Millions of believers disagree. Some believe a clone is merely a shell without spiritual content. Others believe the soul is transmitted along with consciousness. New cults worshipping multiple personalities and sex-exterminating clones as mistakes of nature are emerging. The death of wealthy individuals leads to legal chaos. Clones claim inheritance rights, claiming to be the same individuals. Families are plunged into endless court cases. Judges are faced with the absurdity of 10 identical individuals, each claiming to be the true heir. As a result, new laws are being created, separating the rights of the original from the rights of the copy. Psychologists are documenting a new global syndrome: personality fatigue. People are tired of constantly seeing their own copies. They begin to fear their own habits, words, and gestures, which are repeated by cloned versions. Society adopts anti-identity measures en masse. People change their appearance, style, and voice, just to avoid being one of many. Philosophers call this the greatest crisis in human history. The concept of individuality is disappearing. The self is no longer considered something solid, it is a multitude of reflections, copies, and variations. People begin to perceive themselves as a collective mind composed of versions of themselves. Experiments arise to connect the memories of all clones into a common network, turning a person into a living system of many bodies. Certain regions create societies where cloning is the fundamental principle of life. There is no family, no traditional childhood. Every new citizen is created to order and possesses an adult personality right away. Such civilizations develop incredibly quickly because they can produce thousands of specialists in a single day. But their weakness is obvious: the lack of diversity leads to a fragile mindset. Decades later, the world realizes the key idea: individuality is more important than efficiency. People begin to limit cloning, value uniqueness, and protect their own differences. Clones integrate into society as independent individuals, not copies. The world emerges from chaos and begins to build a new culture where multiple selves become a strength, not a curse. Clones begin to realize that they were created for purposes they did not choose. They experience the same emotions as their originals: resentment, jealousy, a desire for freedom. The first clone movements for emotional independence emerge. They demand the right to their own lives, their own dreams, and a personal path unrelated to their biological counterparts. Some clones even sever ties with their creators, and migrate to other countries to forge their own destinies without the influence of the original. The world is entering an era where originals and clones begin to live side by side as different but equal forms of a single civilization. Science is establishing ethical standards for cloning. Families are emerging in which originals and clones are raised together as brothers, rather than as master and created helper. Cities are beginning to consider the needs of collective identity in their architecture. Humanity, for the first time, ceases to fear its many reflections. It embraces a new form of existence, where individuality and copying become two sides of a single evolution.